Good morning, everybody. I am so excited to be here. I love World Vision. I love what you guys do. I love what you stand for. I love the leadership and the transparency. And whether you're in the field or you're here in the office, that doesn't happen if you're not together. So I don't know if you've never been in the field, or if you've only been in the field, or if you've never been in the office, or you've only been in the office, but thank you for your role. And I know it might be hard to see at times, but your role is so, so important and matters so much. So thank you guys for having me. Just give yourselves a round of applause. To get to know me a little bit better, I have to introduce you to one of my real-life heroes. This is my wife, Bobby Jean. She's my hero. She was, we'll get more in her story, but she's awesome. We met at 17, or we started dating at 17, married at 20, so we'll be married 8 years next month. So we're pretty excited. We have two beautiful baby boys as Justice and Trig. Justice is our oldest on the right. He's 3, and Trig is 1.5. And they're super different, but they love each other. I don't have to tell World Vision that we face challenges in this world. You guys see it every single day through the media that's put out by your company, or if you're in the field and it's in your face. But then there's the other type of challenges, the ones you guys face. Statistically, in a room this size, there are people here who've dealt with self-worth, with abuse, with broken families. So many different issues that are beneath the surface, that are unseen. But God sees them, and He wants to work in them. And He's standing there, and He's ready to work in them. But as we define challenge, there's different types of challenge. There are fun challenges. Building a corporation like this, building an amazing team like this, it's a fun challenge. But then there's those tough ones. And I've been through some of the tough ones in the past few years. And one thing that has really helped me is learning to separate that pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. Pain is what happens to us in these situations that come into our lives. But to suffer, we have a choice. We can have joy in the midst of these major challenges because of the hope that we have in the life that we can have. Dale Carnegie, he says it best. He says, when dealing with humans, we need to remember that we're not dealing with creatures of logic, but creatures of emotion. And we respond not by what we know, but how we feel. I know when I was a little kid, I was really scared of the dark. And I'd sit in my room at night, and I'd think I heard something in my closet or at my window. And my mind would be playing tricks on me. And then I'd eventually get so scared, I'd go and I'd turn the light on, and I'd see, okay, everything's okay. It's fine. And I'd turn the light off, get back in bed. And pretty quickly, as I sat in the darkness, I forgot the truth that I learned in the light. And we do that as we get older, and we do that in so many areas of our lives. So how do we stop responding off of our emotions and start responding off of the truth that we know? And for me, it was really, really helpful to learn to make decisions about who I am, about my faith on the front end. And then it's just a matter of managing those decisions. So I learned about this really early in life. I was a 14-year-old kid. And like lots of 14-year-old kids, I was into sports. And I loved baseball, and I loved wakeboarding and snowboarding and skateboarding. And then we moved to Florida, and I couldn't snowboard at all, and it's too hot to skateboard, so I spent a lot of time on the water. And I was never particularly good at these sports. I always had friends that were better than I was. But when I was 14, my dad told me a story that forever changed my life. He told me the story of how we had spent hundreds of years measuring the time it took people to run a mile. And it was a known fact by coaches and runners and experts alike that the 4-minute barrier was impossible. Then in May 1954, Roger Bannister breaks that barrier. By 1960, just a few years later, we have over 30 other runners do it. Nowadays, we've had hundreds of runners do it. And I realized, what happened? Like, why did people suddenly get faster? Maybe they were so busy looking around at the people and comparing themselves to the status quo that they weren't saying, man, maybe God has created us to be and do more than I imagine. Maybe my biggest limitation is looking back at me in the mirror. I'm too blind to see that. So as a 14-year-old kid, like I said, I wasn't particularly talented. I just started going out and believing I could do and be more. And maybe I could not just be into a sport, but I could push a sport. And I started trying tricks that I had never done and nobody else had ever done. And before I knew it, I was traveling the world. I was getting in on magazine covers and following my dreams. I wasn't any more talented. I was in print ads. What happened was I chose to expect and believe more about who God created me to be than I had ever imagined, and it took me some incredible places. So what can we do in our lives to hold on to that truth? Up to 2012, all the challenges that I had faced were like that. They were challenges that I had chose. And I was in this transitional period where I had kind of come to the top of this career and realized it was empty. And God had put a heart for ministry on my heart. And I didn't really know what to do with that. And I went to school for theology. And I was in this transition period where I was still kind of 1 foot in my action sports career and 1 foot in ministry. And it was going to be my last year on tour. And first contest of the year, I'm riding, and it's a lake I've ridden on lots of times. It's an oval-shaped lake with a canal at the end. And the idea is that the boat can keep and maintain its speed right to the end of the course, and then you just have to get behind the boat as it goes through that canal. It turns around and comes back. I knew how many tricks I could get in. I knew the lake. And as I edged in for my last trick, I didn't realize I'd eaten up that space between the shoreline. And I collided with the shoreline that was covered in rocks. I hit the rocks over 30 miles an hour. The boat speed is going 23, and on edge, they say you can even double the speed, so maybe faster. I had my skull broken in 13 places, broke my jaw clean on both sides. I had a piece of rebar go through the back of my leg, dislocated my hip, broke my tailbone, crushed my hand. And in that recovery, I learned of a personal God that I had never seen, that I couldn't just read about, but I had to experience. And guys, I'm going to put some pictures up today that might be a little bit graphic, but they help tell my story. So this was the position I was in when I crushed my skull. And don't get me wrong, I was super thankful to be alive. I was very thankful to be alive. The doctors told me that I had crushed everything above and below this pressure point in your temple. And a blow to the head half that hard should have killed me or caused severe brain damage. And I was thankful to be alive, but my whole world was flipped upside down. And even though I was moving towards ministry, I didn't realize that I still relied so much on my side of the work. But when I was in this position, learning to walk again with a walker, learning to figure out a way to provide for this amazing wife I had, and drowning in medical bills and all these huge challenges, I looked at this verse so differently. Paul's dealing with this thorn in his flesh, and he doesn't tell us what it is. But he says, 3 times I pleaded with God to take it away. And he says, but he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. And Paul says, well, therefore, I'll boast all the more gladly about my weakness. And what I saw is that it's not that we're weak and God's like, I'll help you out a little bit, you're in this position. But that the greater the gap was between my ability and these amazing situations that were taking care of us where we were at, the more evident it was that this was God's work and this was God's power. And I knew in my heart I would never, you only get, one near-death accident in life, right? I mean, is that fair? So I knew I'd never face anything like that again or anything that hard. But I had to hold on to this forever because I was 8 months later physically recovered completely, but spiritually and emotionally changed forever. But little did I know it was just preparing me for the storm ahead, for the situation that would forever change my life. I was trimming trees at a local church. 1 minute, I was up in this high-reach bucket we'd rented, and next I was waking up from a coma. A lot of people ask what that moment's like, and I wake up. What happened? Where am I? Matt, you've been electrocuted. Electrocuted? I was shocked. Oh, real cool. Laugh at the burn victim, guys. I have a little bit of a sick sense of humor. Sorry, guys. But no, nearly 12 to 20,000 volts. There's a three-phase line, so whether it was 2 or 3 involved, arced over nearly 20 feet through the air and grounded directly to the metal bucket I was in. Ran through my arms and chest and gave me 4th and 5th degree burns all over my upper body. That's just a number. So we called the power company. That was a trailer you just saw to a short documentary that this ministry made called This Is My Story. And we said, what does 12 to 20,000 volts mean in the amperage? Like, give us something quantitative. And they called us back a few days later and said, well, how's this? The voltage you received is exactly the same as if we hooked you to 6 electric chairs and flipped them all on. So that's why we don't really have a statistic for why you survived. 4th and 5th degree burns, I didn't even know what that meant. I thought 3rd degree was the worst, but 3rd degree is where it burns through the skin. 4th is when it starts burning through the muscle, and 5th is when it starts burning the bone. 4th and 5th are almost never survivable. I had all this muscle dying in my upper body. The electricity, like I said, it ran kind of a circuit around my arms as I was holding the controls, and I had headphones on. It caught my headphone wire, went down my leg, burned my iPhone on my leg right here. I have a little Apple symbol burned in, get a little royalty. But it melted my iPhone on my leg. Then it went up the headphone wires. My earbuds exploded. I got 2 sets of skin grafts in my ears. And then it exited through the top of my head and the front and the back. So the doctors were really upfront with my family. They said, look, there is no brain activity. If he comes out of this coma, if he ever somehow lives, he's not Matt, but God. Yeah. But what God can do. My wife was at the scene, and she was helping out inside the church. I was outside the church, and she came out and she said it looked like something from an A&P book where you see this figure with, she could see my whole left rib cage was exposed, my sternum bone, my clavicle. All the skin had just deteriorated, and it was everywhere you couldn't see bone. It was just the muscles just hanging out. And the EMTs held her back, and eventually said, hey, he's dying. You got to let her come say goodbye. And she came over 4 months pregnant with our first child and said goodbye to me. When I got to the hospital, I had slipped into a coma, and they took me immediately to surgery. They didn't give me a lot of hope. There were so many miracles that happened in the hospital that, I mean, we don't even have time to get into, but we were 9 hours away from amputating both my arms at the shoulders. That was a scheduled surgery. When my real first memory happened, it was about the 2nd week, and I had come out of the coma a few days prior and kind of hadn't had any memories at that point, and I just could see everybody in the room kind of fuzzy. And then there was just one person, and it was a doctor, and he said, Matt, we're going to bring in alphabet board and point to letters and try to help you communicate. And we're not really supposed to do this like this, but I need to shoot you straight. And he said, you don't have any skin on your chest and arms. And one dead muscle in your bloodstream is toxic enough to shut down your kidneys and heart. With all this muscle dying in your upper body, it's not a matter of if, but when. And at some point, you're going to start to move into what's called septic. And when that happens, you'll have about 4 to 6 hours to live. And there's nothing we can do. And I thought to myself, man, have you ever considered counseling? Because your people skills are like through the roof. But like I said, my journey is told through pictures. So I won't put any pictures where there's no skin on me, but this was kind of the state that I was in when I was in the coma. And they were just sure there was no brain activity and I would die in a few hours or the next day. His next picture, this is a lab-made layer they put before they can lay skin grafts on just to cover up the muscle tissue and the bone. So this is a product called Integra, and the only place it's not is in that center spot on my sternum because we had to cut part of my sternum out first. His next picture is really, really cool because it describes my wife and I's relationship. Here she is 4 months pregnant, and little did I know she'd run into the hallways, experience morning sickness, throw up, wonder if that was the last time she's going to see her husband. And a time that should have been all about her was all about service and all about strength for me. So she's incredible. His next picture was a really special day. I mean, when you spend months in a hospital room, it's a prison. Those four walls are a prison. And I wasn't allowed outside yet. My physical therapist and my wife snuck me outside. And I'll never forget, I was going down the hallways and I was smiling ear to ear. And then as soon as they wheeled me outside, the wind hit my legs and below my knees was all really the only place I had feeling left. And the wind hit my legs and I just burst into tears. Because I remembered what that felt like. And I suddenly felt human again. I didn't feel like a product that was being poked and prodded. And I realized the things like human touch and being outside and experiencing these gifts that God has given us every day and how we take those for granted. One really profound saying that helped get me through, it's really deep. Wherever you are, there you are. And it sounds so simple, but there is so much depth in that. Because I meet people, trauma victims, I meet people with mental health issues every day that are angry and bitter about their situation. And I want to say, even if whoever's fault this is, whoever you're angry at, whoever, whatever part of life gave you the short end of the stick, even if that person came and said, I'm so sorry, this is all my fault, you're still in that wheelchair. You're still burnt. And I realized I could be this bitter, defeated, scared person. And it wasn't going to make me less electrocuted. It wasn't going to take the pain and surgeries away. What it was going to do is make my family say, you didn't want to know Matt at the end. He wasn't him. And I had to realize that if this story is true, that 2,000 years ago, we had a Savior that came and took on the flesh and died for us so that he could have a relationship with us and was resurrected, then that changes everything. Changes everything. Because it's not a prosperity gospel. It's not, God, if you heal me, if you bring me through this, I will. If then. No, it's, I'm asking you to do something you've already done. I'm asking you to bring healing and restoration in a situation that haven't you already? Because what you did on the cross says that in this world or the next, you bring full restoration to all things. You know, a verse that just I live by and was huge for me was John 16:33. And it says, I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world, you will face struggles. Not you might, you could, you'll probably, you will. But take heart. I've overcome the world. If he's in us and we're in him, then through him we've overcome the world. It's realizing if he never did another thing for us, we still owe him the rest of our lives. One thing that helped me keep this perspective was I was in the kitchen one day with Justice, and I was in the kitchen, and I don't know if you've seen what takes place. I call it a binky, but you might know it as a pacifier. But have you seen a binky fall out of a baby's mouth? I mean, it's pretty life-changing. Like, we're sitting here, binky falls out, and judging by his facial expressions and his attitude, his world collapsed. That's his whole lifeline. It's gone forever. Why does he exist? And we as parents look down and we're like, little dude, it's not gone forever. Like, you need to take it down like 10,000 notches. Like, it's clipped to your shirt, bro. We've overcome the binky issue. But then we get a little bit older. And maybe our parents move away. Our heart's broken for the first time. And once again, our world collapses. And it's a little longer than the binky issue, but nobody understands. My parents don't get it. My friends don't get it. And this isn't fair. And a few weeks later, we're like, okay, maybe Devin wasn't the one. Maybe it's not over. Maybe my world isn't collapsed. But then we grow up, and we forget we're like that. And we're put in a wheelchair. We're burnt. We face major challenges like cancer and loss. And once again, our world collapses. And I picture God going, little dude, do you realize what is 50 or 60 years in a burnt, broken body, using it for my glory, compared to a lifetime in a perfect one? Like, we've overcome the binky issue. I've overcome the grave. And this is such a small piece of what your life is. And you may say, Matt, that's really great to have that eternal view. But what about now? What about today? What is fair? Let's answer the age-old question. Why do bad things happen to quote-unquote good people? Well, let's define fair. Fair is cause and effect. You put your hand on a stove and it's burnt. You don't say, Lord, why are you burning my hand? No, that's okay, because that's fair. Why is it that when we read Scripture, it says the wages of sin is death, but who have sinned all? So fair is we're not having this conversation. So I like to say we serve an unfair God, and don't throw me off stage, just hear me out. Why is it that the best doctors were wrong again and again and again? Why did they say not if, but when your kidneys fail? Not is there heart damage, how bad is it? They were sure my arms were coming off, sure the brain damage was severe, sure that they were keeping me comfortable until I died. Why were the best doctors wrong again and again and again? Why? Because we serve an unfair God who doesn't want to see us broken by our challenges, but he steps in this world and says, this is still my people, this is still my world, and I have the last say. That's the God we serve, who can turn our obstacles and opportunities, take us from bitter to better, and use our misery for his ministry. That's our God. I don't know what you're facing. I wear my scars on my arms for the whole world to see. But some of the deepest scars that you might have carried in today are unseen. But God sees them, and he's standing there, and he wants to work in it. And he's standing at the door knocking, saying, let me walk through this with you. Let me use what you're going through to reach people around you. And I love my dad. He is my best friend. We do everything together. This is him when I first started trying to share my story, because I'm still intimidated by public speaking, and he's helping me just get my... Yeah, of course. He'd say, God, I'll never be the guy on stage. He's like, well... But this is me and my dad. And now that I'm a father, it's hard to imagine that my dad sees me like I see my little boys. That I just want to protect him, and he's like so perfect and without blemish in my mind. And I think, man, how hard was it for my dad to stand there by my bedside and watch as his little boy is broken and bleeding and in tremendous amounts of pain. But how much harder would it have been for him to stand there and watch as all my friends and family get together, my community gets together, drags me down the street, whipping me, beating me, ridiculing me, take me to the center of town, because that's what he did, and hang me on a cross. And when he's in a position to stop it, but he allows it to happen so that he can know you, so that he can walk through this world with you. And he sits there and watches as his son hangs there and suffers and dies because of you. Because he wants to walk through this world with you. He wants to walk through these challenges with you. And he wants to spend eternity with you. Like I said, I don't know what your struggle is. And we can't always choose our challenges, but we can always choose our faith. We can always choose to make decisions about who we will be, regardless of the pain we experience. Guys, pain is inevitable. I've had over 70 surgeries in the last 3 years while I've been under anesthesia 26 times. Pain is a part of life. I know that. But I don't suffer. And it's not fake. It's not smile through the pain. It's true joy in what he's done and what he can do in our brokenness if we're willing. Thank you, guys.